Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Center for Student Involvement and Careers and UBC's Vancouver Port campus are situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Today, you may be joining us from many different places with many different histories, and you can learn more about the traditional owners of those lands at native-land.ca. You should also be able to see a QR code on your screen and in the chat. I'm just going to put that in the chat for you now. Please use the link or scan the QR code to log in and check in and let us know you're attending today's event. My name is IHEID, and I'm an employer and alumni engagement advisor with the CSNIC, and I'll be today's moderator. Whilst in our event space, I would also like to remind everyone that all members of the UBC community are expected to uphold a respectful environment in which respect, civility, diversity, opportunity, and inclusion are valued. Although we may be interacting off campus in a virtual setting, the expectations for fostering a safe and respectful environment for all remains the same for all students, staff, and faculty. As some of you may know, the CSINC supports students throughout your academic journey on campus by connecting you to experiences, resources, and people that will help you achieve your personal and career goals. We do this through a variety of programming, including orientations, mentoring, volunteer and leadership opportunities, and workplace learning. You can visit students.ubc.ca to learn more about our center and services. All of your participants are muted for the duration of the event. Feel free to turn on your camera though. It will be nice to see some of your faces as we go through the presentation. We will have a Q&A opportunity in the second half of today's office hour. Some of you have already sent your questions in advance, and I'll make sure to get to those questions throughout our Q&A. You're also welcome to either send in your questions through Zoom chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your questions live during the Q&A. We really like that when our students do that, so please feel free to do that when we do get to our Q&A portion. Please keep your questions short and concise, as it'll give us an opportunity to answer more of them. Okay, I'm now happy to introduce today's speaker, Grace Kamara. Grace is a young African intersectional feminist passionate about gender equality, social justice, international development, and business strategy. She's a consultant at McKinsey Company, holds an MA in development studies from the Graduate Institute in Geneva, and a BA in international relations with a minor in gender, race, sexuality, and social justice from the University of British Columbia. Over the past 8 years, she has dedicated her intellectual and career pursuits to problem solving across several industries, including but not limited to private equity, financial services, public and social sector, healthcare systems and services, and technology and software. She's also built competence in diplomacy, policy and business analysis, marketing and sales, digital and strategy. In her free time, she enjoys bead jewelry making, writing, and spoken word poetry. In this alumni office hour, Grace will focus on her career story from arts to the UN, tech, and now consulting, and how she's leveraged her skills in support of her career transitions. I'll now give the floor to Grace. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I realize I'm wearing the same blouse as I did in the picture. That was not intentional. I would love to encourage everyone, if you could please turn on your cameras, if you can. I'm a people person, so I get energy of people's faces. So it would be very encouraging if I could see a few faces at the very least. Thank you to Melissa and Michelle for starting off, and everyone else. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'll start off, and before starting, I would like to thank everybody for coming today and for holding this space for me. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my background in terms of like who I am as a person, who I am professionally and academically, and also share with you a little bit about my journey at UBC, my journey during graduate school, and sort of how I started my early career. I still consider myself early career. I saw some questions asking me, what tips did you get in your early career? And I'm like, wait, I'm still there. So, I've been working for about, I would say 5 years or so. And then I'm happy to share sort of how I've gotten here and support everyone to the best of my ability. So a little bit about me. I'm Grace. I'm from Ghana. I grew up in Ghana my whole life. My family is still in Ghana. I was privileged to come to UBC on a scholarship. So I was on what they call International Leader of Tomorrow. I'm not sure if it still exists, but that was a scholarship I came on. And coming to UBC, I was very, very excited about, coming to a new culture, and particularly about, getting into a space where I can study gender and social justice. I come from a family of, I would say, activists. My dad runs an NGO. And so, when I was in high school, I used to do a lot of volunteering work with rural communities across West Africa. And I was always really inspired by the role that women played in transforming some really difficult situations. My dad is from Liberia, and so we grew up understanding what war means. And if you know anything about the Liberian war, you know that it was ended by women who put their foot down and said this has to stop. So I was really inspired by that, and I wanted to study that. So when I came to UBC, I had told myself I'm going to study gender, and my dad was like, you need to do something more marketable. So I was like, fine, I'll do international relations. And then I think UBC was particularly great because I joined arts, and I wasn't entirely sure yet what I would do. I knew I would do gender, but I was convinced that I had to do something else to complement my gender studies. So I think in my first year, I did something called Arts 1. Not sure if it's still there, but the arts degree is really flexible in the sense that I got to try different things. So I took some indigenous related courses, some politics, really a host of different things. And then I was particularly drawn to international relations, and I found it compelling because I could pull, different sectors. I realized that I was more of an interdisciplinary person who was curious about how different things fit together and impact people's lives. So the IR degree was great because I did a little bit of policy, I did some economics, I was able to focus on gender, and I really felt like I was really pushing myself, and then I enjoyed that. However, I would say 2 years into UBC, I began to feel a little bit like, I want to study Africa. I want to study I want to learn about the experiences of African women. I want to learn about Africa and international relations. And I realized that the senior, third, fourth year level courses didn't really have as much of the depth that I would have wanted. Not sure if it has changed, but I came to UBC 2013. So this is about 2014 when I started to have this realization. So what I did was I was doing some research with the head of the IR department at the time. It was a co-op job. Was it co-op or something like that? It was a job while I was in school for doing some research during the summer. And Steve Lee, Dr. Steve Lee, I don't know if he's still there. He was my supervisor, and I shared with him, that I wanted to do something on Africa, and he didn't have the courses. So he was very, very supportive. That's the other thing I'd say, UBC profs that I had were super supportive of me and my goals. And he was really quite determined that he wanted to make sure that I could have the university experience that I wanted. So we sat down, we looked at the courses, for exchange, and we identified a school in Paris called Sciences Po that had a host of courses for international relations and gender studies, for particularly international relations with regards to Africa, and some gender studies courses as well. And all the courses could be transferred to UBC because UBC had that relationship. So I negotiated and ended up doing most of my high-level courses in France. And I found that extremely, extremely helpful. And that's one thing that I would say, if I was to pause and share an insight here, is that one of the really great things about UBC is that the flexibility, and the really great things about the arts degree is the flexibility of what you can do. And simply because it's such a flexible and a really fluid degree, you can find sponsors that believe in you, and you can say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. Can we make this happen? And oftentimes, people will try their best to help you get there. So I went to France, bliss time, on top of all the fun and games, I studied. France was really hard. It was 12 courses per semester, but I pushed through because I was like, I want to study this stuff. And I felt really encouraged to do more work in the international development space. So I returned back for my fourth year, and I finished my fourth year at UBC, but I was laser focused on thinking about what next. And I was really like very excited about what I had studied about, international development in France, and I wanted to keep doing it. So I applied for master's programs. And this is another nugget that I would share, as art students, is that like your profs, for the most part, they want you to succeed. Like profs, I want to say, hey, like my student went to Oxford, or like my student went to like Cambridge, like they want you to succeed. So I had profs that like I had developed relationships with, Steve Lee being one of them. And I don't know if Robert Farkash is still there, but he used to teach poli-sci. Farkash, and like Farkash he's such an interesting guy, tangential, but they were super, super supportive of me, and they helped me identify which schools would be the best to study what I wanted to study. And so we aligned on a number of schools, and I shared with them. And I think one thing that you could do when you're looking at graduate school programs, if you're interested in that, is truly share with your profs like what it is that you're interested in and what you want to do, because it helps on two fronts. On one hand, it will help them like know how to help you to think through what it is that you want to do. But on the other end, it makes them feel valued, and it makes them feel like they're part of the process, which is really rewarding for them. And it will be essential when they are writing your letters of recommendation. When, if they know that it was a process that they did with you, they've talked to you about what you're passionate about, like all of that insights can go into your letter of recommendation. So they helped me identify the schools and identify programs and scholarships, etc. We can definitely talk about scholarships some more, but you have to apply. I had to apply for scholarships, so I couldn't afford it. And I was really privileged. I got one. I didn't, and I stopped myself from saying happened, because women tend to like undervalue ourselves. Like I didn't happen to, I worked hard and I got it. I got into a school, I got into all my graduate schools, and I chose one in Geneva, which focused primarily on international development. In this way, here also I'll pause and share another insight, in the sense that when you're picking your schools, like think about what it is you want after, right? Like think about what you want to do with that degree. For me, when I chose the institute, the Graduate Institute in Geneva, and primarily when I was looking at honestly all my graduate school options in Europe, I put all of them in Europe because I knew I loved Europe. I wanted to be there, so that was a personal choice. And then secondly, like I knew that Geneva is an excellent place to do work in international development, and I had spoken to these profs, and they had shared with me that like, look, if you're looking to get into the UN, this is an awesome school. Like many people may not know it, but it's a school that was designed for the UN, and so it feeds students into the UN. I would have never known that if the profs didn't tell me that, right? So I ended up going to the Institute, phenomenal time. I focused on gender. I focused on gender and health policy, and I was like so happy doing that. I had opportunities again through the university, through the Institute, which is spectacular for international development. I ended up, working with UN Women and the WHO, and honestly a number of other UN organizations on policy, framework development, negotiation, etc. at a high level, and it was extremely rewarding. But that experience came to me through the university, at least my initial exposure, and from my engagements with other folks who also went to do their graduate school in international development and may have worked at these UN agencies. Most folks come through graduate programs. So if you think about the internships, so a lot of the internships programs, the schools have like portals and they post students from there. So if you're looking to get into the UN system, like graduate schools are a really good way to start. And there's a host of them that these UN organizations normally post students from. So that's how I got into the UN system, and I felt so humbled. When you walk on the streets of like Geneva and you're walking in the Palais des Nations, like it feels nice. It's like, wow, I'm like doing something. But then, there's a lot of my work that I can't share for confidentiality, but at some point I began to feel as though like I wanted to do something a bit more fast-paced, and I began to feel like I was just developing reports, and I just wanted something different. At the same time, I will say also that like my visa for Canada was coming up, and Switzerland, it takes like 12 years to get citizenship. So I was just like, something's gotta change, you know. That's the reality of being an immigrant and being a person of color moving through the world, that like spaces have, you know, limits, you know, your visa's gonna expire. And I thought to myself, what am I gonna do? You know, I can't, if I stay in Swiss, who knows what my future looks like. But if I go back to Canada, I know that I could get permanent residency here in about a year or two. So I made the decision to pause my time at the UN and move back. So I moved back to Canada, and I worked for an NGO while I was here. I worked for an NGO for about 3 months. It was a women's shelter. And I felt like it was the right thing to do because I was passionate about gender and I wanted to do that work. But I felt like there's a bit of a gap in terms of like the skills that I was bringing in my own personal growth. And so I decided that like I wanted to be in a space that was more fast paced, and the NGO didn't do that for me. And Canada doesn't have as much of a UN like presence here. So there's that shrunk my options. And I bet a lot of you looking at like, you know, if you're interested in UN, I bet a lot of you are looking at the internships in Canada and there's like close to like none. And another layer of like of complexity for me was that most of my friends who graduated with international relations degrees out of UBC or even out of like wherever in Europe could return back to Canada and work for the government. So like there's a huge like funnel of people that go into like policy in the government. And it's a really like enriching experience. And I have many friends that have shared great journeys, but I didn't have that privilege because I'm not Canadian and I wasn't PR, so I didn't qualify. So I had to do something else. I think, you know, that's the reality of life, that like for me as an African woman living in these spaces, a lot of the times like life happens, right? And I think I try really hard in those moments to focus on the opportunities rather than the limitations. And so I thought to myself, like, this is an opportunity for me to like, an excuse for me to do something different. And I had a friend who was working in technology at a company called SAP out of Vancouver. And I thought, well, why not give it a shot? She said she had done, I had been in gender classes with her, and I was like, how did you get into tech? And she was like, you can do it. So I was like, sure. So I took some time with a friend, and this is where I think like transferability of skills is really key. I took some time with a friend. We like had an evening where we like went through, you know, my interview case, which was a business case, a business technology case. And I had like no idea what was going on, but she like taught me through like how businesses function, how businesses are structured, how like the technology solution works and how to think through solving business problems. And we just honestly took an evening, studied. I tried really hard to like apply my problem solving skills that I had studied in school, my logical thinking, like making sure things make sense. And I just went for the interview. I think a big part of it is also like who you are as a person and your like the excitement that you bring to things and your like your zeal to learn. And I think that I demonstrated that because I ended up getting the job. And then my supervisor told me, look, your technical knowledge, no, but we loved you, and we could tell that like clients would love you. And I was like, sure. So I did that. I worked at SAP for about 2 years, and I had a fantastic time. I was particularly focused on tech marketing and sales. So, you know, at the beginning of the funnel, when people are, you know, businesses are exploring what kind of solutions that they need for their business, solve their business problems, I was like the first point of contact, helping them, map out, okay, this is how your business functions, this is where there are the gaps, this is where there are inefficiencies, and this is how SAP technology can really respond to the challenges that you're experiencing. And it was such an enriching experience. I felt, I realized that the skills that helped me shine at the UN were the same skills I was applying in technology. And you may wonder, like, why? Like, what skills? First one, like people skills. Like as an arts person, like you like, for me, when I studied international relations, you're dealing with diplomats, you're dealing with people, and that like that skill is intangible and is invaluable, right? Like you're just a person. And I think there's something about having an arts degree. Like when I was in arts, like, you know, we're just art students, you know, sort of kids, like they're probably like very intense, got their suits on. Like I never wore a suit in school. I was just a chill girl. And it's just like that relatability that I think I brought to clients when, discussing technology and really being able to simplify the issues that they were experiencing and how the technology would help them. I think a lot of those skills you gain from arts, like you're reading all this like reports, you're reading all these academic articles, and you have to synthesize, you have to get this, so what? And that I brought to clients. And because I didn't have a tech background, I really tried to simplify it so I could understand what I was talking about. And clients also really appreciated that. The other piece that I think I brought from my arts degree to SAP was really like just your ability to learn and soak up knowledge. Like, when you do arts, it's multidisciplinary. You're doing so many things. You have exposure. Your brain is agile. You can move. And I think that kind of like energy and just like openness was something that really helped me, because I was studying technology, and for the most part, like I didn't know nothing about the technology, but like I studied it and I could tell you what it is. And I think that like that is something that was super like helpful on the job. So I did technology for about 2 years, and I felt like, okay, like now what? Like every day I'm talking about software, like then what? So I had a friend, again, friends. So you see, I say friend, but networking, that's what it means. Like people talk about networking, and it's networking with your profs, networking at these like dinners and stuff, but like network with the people in your classroom, because they have similar interests as you, and you don't know what doors they could open for you, right? Like I had a friend I had met in France. I always at Sciences Po when I was on exchange, and that's how I'm at McKinsey now. Like I always used to see her like the smartest girl. I was like, this girl is going to be president. And she was, and like I'm a, like I talk, right? So like during class, like this is who I am, So she remembered me too, and she thought I was fantastic. I was very surprised, but I was like, okay, I'll take the compliment. So she invited me out for drinks, and while I was in Toronto at the time, and I was sharing with her that like I'm not entirely sure about what I'm doing now, and I'm working in tech, and I'm feeling like it's fun, but like I think there's a bit of a ceiling, and I don't know what to do. And she was like, why don't you just join McKinsey? And I said, what is McKinsey? So then we had this whole conversation about consulting and et cetera, et cetera. It took me about a year before I applied formally for McKinsey for many reasons. And I think some folks may feel this. And I think for me, the main reason why I hesitated was because I felt I didn't feel confident. I had done a case with one person who had gone to SODA. I knew everything that there was to say. And I thought to myself, there's no way I could get this job. Let me just like do my thing and maybe go back to the UN. And I doubted myself. But a year into the pandemic, or a few months into the pandemic, I just thought to myself, like, Grace, why not? Like, it's over Zoom. I'm never going to meet them in person anyways. So I put my application in, and then I went through the really challenging process of like preparing for cases with no business, like, well, I can't say no business background because I did work in tech, sales, but like very minimal, I would say, like foundational business knowledge and like no idea what consulting was. I leveraged a lot of support from the Black community. I leveraged a lot of support from like my friends who I knew in the industry, random strangers. I just, pulled everything that I could. And it worked out. So, I say this to say, just in summary, because I think we will have much more fun in this conversation when I'm engaging with your actual questions. But, my transition from space to space has been, really fun for me, but it's also been riddled with a lot of challenges and a lot of risks that I took. And I think one of the key things, there's 3 key things that someone asked a question about advice, like what was the best advice that you've given? And I know we're not our questions here, but I wanted to make sure I get to that one because it was like at the bottom. I think some of the best advice that I've gotten, first one is to be bold, like to say what you want, like, and to be able to say what you want, you need to know what you want. Like, think about what you want, come up with your bold ideas. Like, what you're at the beginning of your life, like you could do anything and everything. So like say those things and like push for them. And then the second one is like, hold your opinions strongly. Like if you believe in something, believe in it. But if someone shows you data that proves the opposite, let it go quickly. Like that's the mark of a good consultant. Like hold on to your idea because like it's like, this is a good idea, I believe in it. But if someone shows you an alternative path that makes sense, like be humble enough to let it go. And the last thing is like, be kind to yourself first and then to others, in the sense that like we always talk about holding space and being kind to others and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the times like we're really hard on ourselves. Like we tell ourselves like, I can't do this, or I don't have the capabilities, or I don't know how, or like I don't have the degree, I don't have the skills. But like, who cares? Like you're at the beginning of your career, you can do it, like you can learn it. Like, and at this stage in your career, everyone's looking for someone that can learn and that can grow and that they can feed into. So like, be kind to yourself, learn. Don't be upset when you make mistakes. Like, okay, you can be upset for like a while, like be kind to yourself to be upset, but like, it's okay to forgive yourself, you know, just as you would do to others. So I'll pause here. It's been a bit of a monologue and I should get some water to drink right here. So I'll pause here and open up to Amir to guide the sort of question and answer session.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Grace, for just walking us through a sort of general view of your career coming out of UBC and what that's looked like. I wrote down some questions as you were speaking also, so I'm sure there's a lot here. We also had, like I said, a lot of questions that came in before the event. So I'll open it up now to our Q&A. We'll jump right in. If anybody in the room has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, use your mic and camera to ask a question. We would love that. If you feel comfortable to send it in the chat, please do that also. That would be amazing. We'll get to you one by one. In the break, I see the first questions coming in. And while we do this, I'll go back and forth with the questions that had already been sent to me as well. So I'll start, Parisa, I saw your hand was raised first, so I'll go to you first. So I'll just, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, go ahead.
Thank you, Amir. And hi, Grace. My background is very similar to yours. I did a degree global resource system with the Faculty of Land and Food Systems. And I was also getting into UN, but a lot of internships, as you know, they're unpaid, and I didn't have the privilege to be able to work, you know, abroad, having to pay for everything, you know, all that. So I do have a background working with in nonprofits here. But same as you, I find more that I'm very interested in consulting because I love that problem solving aspect of it. And I think that's one of the best ways of like getting involved if you don't want to be involved with the governmental sectors and everything. So I just wanted to know, like, for somebody like me who thinks that has the problem solving skills and has a little bit of background in business in terms of like taking some courses at Sauder, knowing how to write a business plan, entrepreneurial skills and all that, how can like somebody like me go about like transitioning into consulting? Because as you might know, like I do have that, like my resume, I feel like I know that I'm capable of it, but I'm not sure if my resume reflects that. And, you know, it's a competitive field as well. How about would you go after this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very good question. I was trying to write down here. So a few things. First of all, it sounds like you do have a great profile for consulting, so I'd encourage you to apply. The second thing that I would say is that, like, I think, you know, you mentioned all of these things that you've done and all of these like sort of spaces that you've been in, which you think would be great or position you well for consulting. And I think, you know, a lot of the times we assume that like consulting companies are looking for a specific kind of applicant, and I think that like that's a that's not true. I thought that I worried about that too, if I'm to be honest. Like I have an arts degree, like even you took courses on entrepreneurship, like I didn't, and then I wonder like would I be sufficient? But I would say that there's a few things that like consulting firms look for. And then I can only really speak for McKinsey because that's honestly the only consulting firm that I applied for. And there's three main things that we look for in applicants when we look at your resume. First one is your problem solving ability. Second one is your entrepreneurship. Thirdly is your personal impact. impacts. And there I would say, when we think about, I think there's a fourth one. It will come to me. But let's start with entrepreneurship, right? Like, what's really key, it's not about where you did it, but it's about the impact that you had, right? So if you started something, if you grew something, if you created something, that's entrepreneurship, right? If you think about problem solving, like you've probably been in the last one is leadership, just came to me. If you've been in spaces where you've had to solve certain problems, like no matter what the space is, that's problem solving. Leadership, if you had run a team or run an organization or whatever, that's leadership. And those are experiences that consulting firms want to see. When we do our interview process at McKinsey, we test your business knowledge through our cases. So we have business cases that test your business knowledge. I mean, those are very structured and those are learnable. On the other hand, we also have like behavioral sessions where we test where we try to understand how you've demonstrated your entrepreneurship, your leadership, and your personal impact. And those don't have to be business specific. They can be in any space. So for example, when I talk in my interview, using myself as an example, for entrepreneurship, I shared, I had worked with a friend who had started a tech startup in Ethiopia. And I shared that that's not necessarily business related. When I talked about like my leadership, I talked a lot about the work that I had done with in graduate school, creating programs and conferences to bringing together like Black professionals and African professionals. That has nothing to do with like business. When we think about so I could go on, but my point here is that like you don't have to have demonstrated this in a business setting. You just need to show that you can do it. The great thing about like consulting is, and one of the things that the data tells us is diverse teams have the most impact. And so we really would love people from different backgrounds to share their perspectives. And so like, that's great. Like if you are a strong performer in your space and you want to keep doing the work that you're doing, even if you want to do like work with government and public policy, McKinsey does a lot of that kind of work as well. We have a whole public and social sector practice that does a lot of the work that UN organizations also may want to do. So just to share that, like, there's lots of space for folks from arts backgrounds.
Thank you for your feedback, Grace.
Thank you so much, Parisa, for your question. Maybe, Grace, I see a couple of hands, so we'll go Anne next and Sunil. But before we do that, I wanted a little follow-up to Parisa's question. If you mentioned when you were thinking about McKinsey, you got the support of a friend to walk you through some of the processes. If you don't have an internal contact within one of the consulting firms, are there habits of hiring cold hires, so people who don't have anyone in their network within those organizations, just based on what you've seen?
Yes, 100%. So as I said, I was particularly privileged in it to have a friend. You don't necessarily need one. So I had a friend who like told me about consulting and she kind of just left me and she went to do her job. So I kind of had to figure out my own thing. But so what I did and what I would really encourage you to do is there's always we always have recruiting events for like, you can have like the general recruiting events. You can also have the like specific like for Black folk or for our agents at McKinsey, like whatever it is. There's different recruiting events for affinity groups, but also in general. And what I personally did, it was like I joined one of the recruiting events for that was led by the McKinsey Black Network, and I found women on that call who were also applicants, and I found them on LinkedIn, and I said, "Hey, I saw you on this call. We're both trying to get into McKinsey. Do you want a case?" And that's how I built my network. I just found people, on calls and message. There's a lot of people that don't respond back, but that's fine. Like you probably get a 20% response rate, and that's okay. Like you just have to keep trying. So I would suggest two things tactically. Even if you don't know anybody at the firm, like still put in your application. I know people that have gotten called and they didn't know anybody. So like, please put in your resume still. Secondly, like, me. Hey, now you know me, and the recruiter agreed for me to share her contact. So I can share her contact on the call. So you can also reach out to her. So that's another person that you know. But you're doing the right things. Like even being on this call is the first thing you should be doing.
So that's great. Perfect. Thank you for that answer. Okay, we'll go to Anne next. Anne, if you would like to. There you go. Perfect.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace, for your story. I really appreciate you sharing it. I'm just having a questions in regards of the diversity part of it, just because I came from LFS as well. And I'm in science, and then I also have business background. And I thought it would be really interesting for me to go into consulting or anything in regards of that. But I feel like when I spoke with my friends who work in one of the consulting firm, he kind of get confused. He's kind of like, well, you have science and also you have business, so what do you want to do? Like, to me, I feel like when I'm talking to applying for jobs, because in my 5th year, I am actively looking for jobs, and I feel like I'm hitting a wall. It's like you have to be like all science or you have to be all business. So I'm not sure like how would you approach it, because it sounds like you do have that experience of being diverse, but when I talk to other people, they kind of I didn't feel appreciated in terms of diversity of it. So just my, if you could share that, that'd be great.
Thank you. That's a good question. I would say definitely go where you are appreciated and where you want to go. In full transparency, like consulting firms are different. Like every firm is different, right? Like, and every firm may look for something different. I can only speak from the perspective of McKinsey. And particularly, like, I think it's important to note, and I don't know if this is clear to everybody, but there's different kinds of consulting firms. So from my understanding, there's primarily the big 4 consulting firms, and then there's the like big 3 consulting firms. So like the big 3 are McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, and we primarily do strategy consulting. So when you join these firms, you know that you're doing primarily strategy across a variety of different industries. When the big four are, I think, Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, and I forget the 4th, but those ones are more like specific. So I know they have strategy arms, but for the most part, from my understanding, from what others have shared with me, when you join those firms, you're doing a specific thing. So you pick a particular area and you just do that particular thing. McKinsey and the big 3 are not like that. So there's a distinction. So you should know who you are talking to. So with us, with management consulting, it's designed for people who want to do different things. So when you join as a business analyst like myself, or as an associate, if you come with an MBA or a PhD, you are expected to spend your first year doing things across a variety of industries. And that's why having a diverse background is particularly useful. So just to share personally, I've done work in private equity, I've done work in insurance, I'm currently doing work in environmental conservation for an African country. I've also done like beauty. I did some work with COVID vaccines. So like I've done so many things, and it's because and that's perfect for me, right? So I think that's another thing, you know, when you're selecting what you want to do next, like find the places that are looking for people with that kind of like nuanced background. And I think, you know, the strategy consulting or the management consulting firms, McKinsey particularly, I can share, will appreciate that kind of background.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank
so
you
I guess
for the
it's just
question,
like,
Anne.
sorry, I just want to
Keep going, please.
Sorry, I just want to reiterate. So you're thinking like who will be really important and how you approach it will be important. Then.
Yes. So like tactically, what I'm saying is there are some firms that are looking for people with specific backgrounds, and there are some firms that are looking for people with diverse backgrounds. McKinsey is one of those. I can't speak for the others, but what I can say is that McKinsey, because of how much your work can change, it's good if you have a diverse background, and they're not looking for one particular kind of person.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, we'll keep going with the raised hands. I promise we'll get to the other questions as well. Sunil, you were next in line, so I'll just add the spotlight. If you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, my background might be a little loud, so I'll keep my question short. I'm a 3rd year BCom student, like I just finished my 3rd year. And I feel like I have a good like aptitude for consulting, but I'm very shy. So I just wanted some advice on like how to be more outgoing, or if it's appropriate to cold message people that are already working in an organization I'm interested in. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think those were two questions. The first one has to do with like your personality and being shy or maybe an introvert. And the second one has to do with cold calling. I'll answer cold calling first. It's a quicker one. Please cold, like be cold, like cold text, cold anything. Like what's the worst people can do? Not respond. And if they don't respond, it's not because they don't, who knows? It's like they're busy. Like I have messages on LinkedIn, hundreds. Unfortunately, some people may be on the call who be like, Grace didn't respond, but it's because like I'm busy or I don't have capacity or whatever. So just do it. Like people, you never know. Like time may just align and someone will respond. So don't feel bad if people don't respond. It's normal. It's not you. It's also not them. It's just the world. And then the second thing with regards to, being shy or being an introvert, I found like really interesting. So at McKinsey, we're really into, well, the firm was really into MBTIs. I don't know if anybody knows MBTIs, but it's this personality test. And, there's a lot of people that have personalities that start with I, which is the introvert like trait. And a lot of those people may tend to be more shy or, can you share? Yes, my MBTI, it really depends on the day or who I'm talking to. But for the most part, I used to be ESTJ before I got into consulting, and I became ENTJ after consulting. But yes, I'm somewhere in between. But the point is that like there's so many people that are I's, so many people that are introverts and would rather not talk. I mean, that's okay. I think what's most important is like when you get into a space, because with consulting, it's a people business, right? It's client service. So when you get into a space, like do whatever helps you to feel the most confident and the most like ready to share. If it's like planning everything that you're going to say, having your deck ready, like whatever it is that makes you feel most confident. But what I would encourage you to do is like, a lot of the times perception is reality. So even if you don't feel like if you feel shy, like try really hard to just share the aura of confidence, and the other person will receive that. And you will feel confident if you're better prepared for that kind of conversation. At the end of the day, like consulting is client work. And when you do the case interview at McKinsey, you're primarily like talking. So it's a face-to-face kind of case, and you're engaging with your interviewer, right? So you do have to be prepared to talk. The other thing that I would say is that there's lots of space for people that are more introverted in consulting. It really just depends on the kind of work you do. And I think that's why the diversity of our work is so important, because there's a lot of people I know that just do due diligences or private equity work. And what this entails is like, it's not a very client facing, it's very much like you're focused on your analysis, you're focused on your model, and you present that to the clients at the end of like the engagement, and that's it. And maybe that's what you like. So there's lots of space. You can find what it is that like it feels most comfortable for you. But certainly when you're going through the interview process, like it's a people business, so you do have to give off an aura of confidence.
Melissa, you're next, but before we jump to your question, I just wanted to ask a follow-up on behalf of Sunil. So when you're talking about call contacts and you have a lot of messages in your inbox right now, is there a way that someone can stand out in their contact? If it's a cold contact, if it's a warm contact, you know the person, there's maybe an introduction. If it's a cold contact, maybe for you, because you can't speak for everybody, but what would make somebody stand out in their cold contact?
That's a really good question. And this, I don't think I have the best answer to, because obviously I haven't cracked the code. But I would say, like, for me, the first thing, and not as like, this is not as structured, but the first thing is like, please be explicit about what you need. Like, ask for what you need in the in the message. Like, when I get messages, people saying, "Hey, how are you?" Like, just not going to respond. I have friends and homies. Like, I'm not going to respond to your "Hey, how are you?" Like, no. So like, be very like tactical, and like just tell. I would suggest, share with a person, "Hey, like, I saw your profile on this particular thing. I also am interested in it, or I have a background in this. I would like to have like 20 minutes or 5 minutes of, honestly, don't say 20 minutes, like just say like you have capacity for like a 5 to 10 minutes, quick call. I would love to like, pick your brain about something, or I'd love to get your perspective on this or whatever. Let me know, I'm available, whatever. And you tell me when you're available, and just make it quick and efficient for me, because I really don't have time. Like I work very long hours, since I work till like midnight. So like I'm super busy. So when I scan my stuff, I want to see exactly what you need and let you know if I can do it, right? And that way, you asked. So if the person can't do it, the person doesn't respond, like you're not sitting there wondering, well, should I send another message? Like, you asked, like you're very tactical. The other thing that I would say is like truly find, like be purposeful about who you engage with and when and why you engage with them. So when I was going through my recruiting, I had like 3 tiers of people that I engaged with, and I was very strategic about it. The first tier of people were people that were like super, like people that were super low stakes for me, like randoms from calls who honestly, they were just helping me, like we were just casing together and I didn't feel bad about it, right? And those people are super easy for you to like get their contact, and that the volume will be high. So that's the first tier. The second tier is like people who matter, but not that much, in the sense that like they're probably people who are in the company, so you want to like maybe have 1 or 2 of those people to like chat with or get a sense of if you are going in the right direction, etc. Those people, like they probably are not the decision makers, but they're a little bit of gatekeepers in the sense that they have information that you require. And those people you probably get like maybe just a few of them. And then the last tier, like if you think about it as like a pyramid, the last tier is like the people that like really, really matter for the end goal, right? So like those people, you will reach out to them when you have the interview, like, or maybe you're about to apply, like you message them and say, hey, like I'm I'm a Black woman interested in X, or like I'm an Asian person interested in Y, or I have a degree in London foods, whatever it is you connect with them on, and you say, hey, I have this interview on this day. I would love 5 minutes of your time just to make, whatever. So be really tactical about who you message and what you say to them and why you're messaging them. Like there's cold calling, but like in everything, have a strategy.
And to be fair, I think I reached out to you cold message on LinkedIn, right? I don't think we had a connection from the past. So I think I just reached out just to see if you're interested to do this talk. So it does work, even if the inbox is packed, it could work. Okay, yes. Melissa, I'll jump to your question if you want to unmute.
Hi, Chris. How are you? Yeah, my name is Melissa, and I recently graduated from UBC, and I'm currently working. So my question is actually on something you talked about earlier in your story. So I did a major in psychology and a minor in gender, race, sexuality, and social justice. So I'm also very interested in stuff to do with social justice and gender work. And so I'm currently working in an NGO. And I think you mentioned that when you were working at an NGO, you felt that you are not growing in terms of your skills. And my question would be, when do you actually determine, when do you know is the right time to move on from one job and go to the next one? Because I feel like sometimes I can be very irrational and I can make such decisions within a month, and everyone else will be like, yeah, I think it's a bit too early to decide. So when do you know how to shift from one job to another, and how do you even navigate that?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad to know that the degree still exists, and that people is still out there. Those are really good questions. I'll start with the first one about when you know it's time to leave, and tactically, secondly, how to do that. I think I like the idea of opportunity cost, and I don't know if that's a framework that really businessy. Wow, great. Opportunity cost. Well, what that basically means is that what do you lose if you decide to do something else, right? And it's really a question of risk versus reward, right? So for me, what I try to do is really think about, okay, what next? What value or what skills or what experiences would I be getting from the next experience? versus what am I getting now? And it's really about you weighing out like one versus the other and which one comes up on top. The other thing, it's like, it's also very personal. I think and that's why I really encourage people to really listen to themselves and what it is that you want to do. Likely, if something comes to you in a month and you decide to do it in a month, there's probably been seeds of like uncertainty before that you may not have like tapped into. So I would suggest tactically a few things. I think personally, I've always been quite like tuned into like what I'm passionate about. Like I've always known that I wanted to do work that impacted the lives of women and girls. And I always just felt like I wanted to, okay, let me take a step back. Sorry, this isn't as organized. The reason why I have pivoted from one place to another truly is because I'm always looking for an alternative platform that's going to have more impact. And that's really where the question of opportunity cost comes. In a sense, like part of the reason why I left the NGO sector into technology was that I felt like the impact that I was having was quite siloed on a small group of women and very impactful, but I wanted to do work that would touch the lives of more people. And so for me, that was really the opportunity cost. That like I was leaving this really impactful work with the shelter, but I was going to help a host more companies, solve their business problems. And indeed, like honestly, truly, it was a difficult decision also to leave the tech sector. And here also that the question of opportunity cost became clear because I felt like in full transparency, I want to dedicate my life to serve women and girls. And I worked in tech and I didn't feel like I was doing that. And so I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do something that felt right. But at the same time, I also wanted to do that thing in a platform that will expose me to a wider range of people than the NGO did, right? So for me, it was really a very strategic and calculated move of like, okay, I'm going into consulting. It's also business, but I want to go in there so that I can create my own space to do the work that I'm passionate about. So I would say if I was to take a step back and summarize or synthesize my response to you, you will know when it's time to leave when you care more about doing something else. And when you feel like your impact will be more valuable in another space. And everyone is different. For me, it's a question of impact and where I feel like my work is valued and where I feel like my work helps others. But for some people, it's money. Like I particularly came back to Canada. Like one of the reasons why I left the UN system in full transparency was internship, they don't pay. And consultancies, so once you graduate from being an intern, they give you a consultancy in the UN, and it depends. Like some folks are really lucky to get really long contracts, but I wasn't one of those. So I was looking at financial instability and telling myself, I don't want to be in this position. Like I take care of my mom. I came here on a scholarship, so I don't come from a wealthy background. I have family to take care of, and I need money. So like there's many considerations. So I've shared with you like it was impact, but it's also money, and you have to think about your own personal situation and pivot and don't apologize for it. Like do what works for you. I'll pause here. That was a bit of a rant.
No, I really appreciate your answer. Could I just follow up with one tiny question? So I've also considered the move from like how do I put it, from like an NGO to consulting, and I have friends who work in consulting, but just in my head, I just think it's such a huge transition going from like working with people in like NGOs and like being impactful and doing consulting. So how did you shift your brain from, I don't know if I'm trying to make sense. I just feel like they're such different worlds, and my friends have suggested me looking into stuff to do with consulting, but I haven't been able to like match the worlds together.
Yes, I think you're asking two questions, like tactically, how do you like transition, but also how do you feel good about like you moving? And I think I'll start with the second because it's key. a couple of things. I chose McKinsey primarily because of the work that McKinsey does in public and social sector. McKinsey leads on like research with regards to women in the workplace. We have a report that comes out every year, and that details out, the experiences of women, and it's particularly key for helping companies, get better with gender equality. And I was inspired by that. I looked at the time when I was applying for McKinsey. McKinsey had just come up with this 10 actions for Black equity, and it laid out like very tactically what the firm is going to be doing to support Black businesses and to promote Black entrepreneurs. I was inspired by that. I looked at the work that McKinsey does in Africa and the transformative work that it did in the public health sector. Look at the AIDS, like McKinsey was particularly phenomenal in terms of helping South Africa and Southern Africa like get the AIDS crisis like down. Like think about COVID, vaccines, like all of that stuff. That's really impactful work that McKinsey does. And I looked at the work that I had done in the UN, and I saw many parallels. And in fact, in many ways, I felt like consulting firms, like, and I've come to learn, like, they drive a lot of impact in some of these spaces. There's a lot of, and I can't share in full detail, but there's a lot of like international organizations that just pay consulting firms to go on the continent and support businesses and support countries. Like, I'm doing work right now with an African country that is looking to become a world leader in a particular space, and really helping them identify like, what should you do? How should you do it? How do you design? Like, how do you, reorganize your debt? Like all these like very strategic and important high level questions. Like these are problems that we grapple with. And for me, like I felt, and I was telling my significant other this a few days ago, that like, I feel like I'm doing something good on this project and it feels right. And I think that's the kind of feeling that you want to feel. And I think find the places that can do that. And I only applied to McKinsey, to be honest, because I knew McKinsey does a lot of this work. So I would very much encourage you to apply. Yeah, so that's that. And then the other question you had was very tactical about like, how do you tactically make the switch? And I think another lady had asked, I think Parisa or someone else had asked this question. And it's really like, I would really encourage you, because we are not necessarily looking for someone with a business background. We're looking for someone that can think, someone that can solve problems, someone that can own a situation and really drive it to the end. Like that's the kind of like spirit that we're looking for, like someone that has demonstrated entrepreneurship. Like all those like things is what we're passionate about. Like I've met people at the firm that like have done the most random things, like, and I'm just like, wow, there's a guy who I met out of Calgary, and he was a footballer or something like that. Like, I was just like, well, you're cool. Like, there's so many random people who've done all sorts of things. Like, what matters is that you do something that you're passionate about. It's impactful. That matters more than having the one line, business degree.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you for that answer, Grace. I think we had a couple of people had asked similar questions before, so we're covering some of the questions that were sent in advance also. Okay, Ashley, you are next. Thank you for waiting, and I'm just going to spotlight you, and feel free to ask your question.
Hi, hi Grace. Thanks for talking.
Sorry, Ashley, quick thing. I just want to bump up that. I think someone made a comment about when learning stops, that's time to transition. Bumping up, that I fully agree with that. Ashley, please go ahead.
So, thanks for covering everything so far. I was wondering, you talked a bit about like you moved to Switzerland for your new UN job, and then you moved back to Canada for more practical reasons. And I've had a few friends who've moved either for job offers that they've received, or also for the potential of jobs, like moving to Ottawa because they want to work more in the government sector. And I was wondering how you would approach moving with relation to jobs, like accepting jobs that would require you to relocate, or looking in other places to where you live currently for jobs, and like how you approach that and do the cost benefit analysis for that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, this sincerely is a more sort of like personal question. I think everybody has a very different situation. So I can share from my sort of like what matters to me and my thought process. I love to travel. I mean, I moved here from Ghana, moved to Vancouver from Ghana, farthest place away from home I could possibly be. Like, so I am very, very open to it. And in consulting, like, there was times where I'd fly out every every Sunday night and come back home like every Thursday. That's just my reality now. And I've always quite loved it. So I'm very much open to it. But the other thing, I think it also aligns very well with what I want to do with my life and with my career. I studied international development and I wanted to do international work. And I think that in itself just lends itself to travel. So you have to know what it is that's important for you. And if you want to move at this stage in my life, like I'm at a space where I live with my significant other. He moved here from the UK to be with me. So I've made the strategic decision that like, I will stay here, which is so hard. Because I'm thinking I could be in South Africa, in Johannesburg, because it was an option I considered. But I'm here because like I care about him and I love him more than I love the beaches of South Africa. And maybe we can go there for fun. So it really just depends on you and what you want to do, what space of your life you're in and what matters. For me, when I was at UBC, I was in third year uni, like take me anywhere. I went to France in a heartbeat. Like I wanted to go. From my master's, I wanted to go the farthest place away from here, just to like experience different things. I think there's something about like when you want to do international development or when you want to impact like people's lives, a good part of it is like experiencing what it's like. And whenever I travel, as a Black woman, I wear my Blackness very, very strongly. And I'm very, very like excited and interested in hearing about what the Black experience is in different spaces. So any country that I've lived in, I've always wanted to see what it means to be Black over there and really like understand what that means, because these are the people who I want to serve. And so for me, I think, it really depends on you. And I think that there's a lot of value in traveling, in exposure. I think it stretches you, it opens up different parts of your mind and of your heart that you may not have even known existed. And there's something really powerful about it. So I would encourage you to experience different cultures. And if there's a job somewhere that's like, you love the job, it's a new space, like, I mean, I would, but it really just depends on you.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense and goes kind of with what I was thinking. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Grace, I think you need to keep a recording of this and then show it later to your partner about the South African beaches versus the decision you're making here. Just have the recording handy.
No, he's aware. He's very supportive. He said, go to South Africa. I'm like, why not? But I was just like, no, I want to be home. So it just depends, right? And my partner is very supportive. Love him. Great guy. That's great. I see someone from my LinkedIn, someone who I pulled in from my LinkedIn. Please.
Yeah, I'll spotlight you. Othman, I think. Am I saying it right? I hope.
Yes, Othman.
Othman. Okay.
Yeah, hi Grace. Really nice to finally get to talk to you. And so we're LinkedIn and ILOT and different UBC. So looking back at your time as a student, I think this is much less related to your experience as a consultant, but like to your overall experience. And just looking back at all the achievements that you've done and all the things that you've been able to accomplish in your background, I'd assume that, I see a lot of ambition, and that's something that I feel like a lot of us can relate to. But I think from that ambition and that overall attitude to like being like always like an achiever and like achieving a lot, I assume that it puts a lot of pressure on you, and it did put a lot of pressure on you as a student. I'm not sure if it did, but I'd love to hear about your experience. But what would your recommendation for students who feel that pressure to achieve in the long term and who are driven by ambition, but there's also that fear to not be able to achieve whatever grand thing they hope to achieve? How do you reconcile, how do you get over that pressure if you felt it as a student, which I would say you did because of all the great things you've been able to accomplish? So yeah.
That's a very, very kind way to put it. All the great things. I don't even know if I would say that, but thank you. I appreciate the compliments. I think, you know, it's a constant thing of like reaffirming myself. And I think, you know, one of the things that I personally would say in response to that is really remind yourself of how far you've gotten and what your achievements are, and remind yourself that like it was you that did those things. And the same you that did those things will be able to do the other things that you want to do. Like you personally, like you're an IHEID, that's an amazing scholarship that you came to UBC on. And that in itself is a platform. That's something to pat yourself on the back for. And a lot of the times, like we live in a society where like people, you know, you okay, let me pause. There's a phrase that we use at McKinsey called an insecure overachiever. And what that person is somebody that like is like, they want to do really well, they're ambitious, they've achieved a lot, but they're super insecure about it. So at every stage, when something goes wrong, or when there's a challenge or there's a next hurdle, like you become insecure and you wonder, like, would I be able to get to the next level? And I think, first of all, like having the realization in your mind that like, this is me, like I'm an insecure overachiever, it's like a good block. So when you start to feel that level of like insecurity, you remind yourself. But the other thing that I would say is like, it's okay to sometimes like not be sure about like what's coming next, or like feel like I don't really know. But what I would encourage you to do is to like treat that as an opportunity rather than like something that's going to hold you back, in the sense that like, be proud of your achievements and know that whether or not you achieve this next thing, it doesn't matter. You're still fabulous. Like I have to tell myself every day, Grace, you're fabulous. Like if tomorrow you make a pages or your model isn't great, you're still fabulous. Like it's okay. Like it's a learning opportunity. You go through it, you will come out better. And like, even if you don't win, that's fine. And you have to give yourself that level of like freedom and space to accept that like you're a human and that you too will make mistakes. And that although you are ambitious, like the road to the journey to wherever you're looking to get to is not a linear one. I think a lot of the times, like when I look back at my very short career, I try to like, sometimes I get really humbled by it, because there's been many times where I felt like this was the end. Like when I moved back here from Geneva, I had no idea what I was going to do, like, none. Like I was just like, I just need to get these papers, like as an immigrant. I was I had no job. I had like, my scholarship from graduate school was gonna end, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I panicked and I did something. And sometimes you just have to trust yourself that like, you've gotten yourself this far, you will make a decision. It may not feel right, but like, it's gonna be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. And I know maybe this wasn't the best answer, but I think that in itself is indicative of the fact that it's a process, and that like, it's okay to not always have it, you know, tied together in a bow. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question. Okay, keep the questions coming. I don't like the sound of my own voice when we do these recordings, so I'll rather not ask the questions on your behalf. But oh, there we go. Amazing. Thank you. Tiffany, you are next. I'm going to spotlight you here. Go ahead.
I don't know if it is really a question, but I always have the problem of finding the uniqueness of myself, like, because there are always people that are better than you in many other aspects. So how do you find the point or the area that you think you are unique, or that makes you stand out from others? Because even maybe like you work in NGOs, or you work in like, even if you have a lot of achievements, I always feel like those are like not really special, like many other fabulous people outside there. How do you like overcome or make yourself, I don't know, like, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I think that's a great question, Tiffany. Thank you for asking. Firstly, I will say, you know, when you said there's many people that like, there's always someone that's like better or more fabulous than you. But then in the same vein, there's always someone you're more fabulous than. Like it works the same way, you know, like it's like, where on the spectrum are you? So like remind yourself of that. Like instead of saying, you know, there's people that are more fabulous than me, say that they are more fabulous than others. And it may sound really cocky, but like you need to tell yourself that. Like if you don't hype yourself up, nobody else will. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think embedded in data is that like the data suggests that women tend to undervalue themselves. So women tend to tell ourselves, we tend to tell ourselves, and I say this to you because you're a woman. I'm not like, okay, women tend to women tend to do it, and essentially what women tend to do is compared to men, women will only apply, women mainly apply for jobs when they have about 80% of the requirements, but men, if they have 30%, they apply. and I think that says a lot, right, about, you know, you believing in yourself and you believing in your capacity to learn. Think about it this way: when employers hire you, they don't want to hire someone that knows everything, because like, what's the point? Like you're gonna leave, like you're gonna leave after like 2 months. You're gonna be like, there's nothing for me to learn here. So like employers value that there's a gap and that there's a place for you to grow, and you don't have to be perfect when you apply for things, and you have to give yourself that like level of flexibility and that, honestly, that kindness. So remind yourself of that. And then tactically, in terms of like, you mentioned that you did work with NGOs, like how do you set yourself apart? I'll tell you something that my dad always told me growing up. I think it's a little bit problematic, but I'll say it nonetheless. And he always says, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is that you're the best at it. And I say this to say, like, obviously not everybody's going to be the best at something, but you can do your work to the best of your ability. Like if this is the thing that you love, or the thing that you own, or the thing that you want to do, like be creative, like go above and beyond, like push yourself, like let people see that, like, hey, like Tiffany wants to do a great job at this, and Tiffany is doing a great job at this. Like push yourself, because it doesn't really matter. Like there'll always be many people doing the same thing, but it's like, what defines you? And I think that this is the point where you have to think about what your brand is. Like what do you want people to say about you? Like any team I leave, they always say, Grace is a ray of sunshine. Like Grace, if you get Grace on the call, like you're gonna leave smiling. Like Grace is gonna encourage you. There's something about you that adds value, and find that thing. And it took me, honestly, people telling me that like I'm a ray of sunshine. Before I was like, oh, maybe I am a ray of sunshine, and I just like owned it. So like sometimes it's you finding those things about yourself, but sometimes it's leaning on people that believe in you and people that would tell you, hey, like something about this thing that you do, Tiffany, that's fantastic. And find those people that believe in you. Find those people that say those nice things about you, because you need to gas yourself up, and you need people to gas you up every single day so you feel good. So like push yourself. So tactically, find what it is that you're passionate about. Secondly, make sure you do a damn good job when you're doing that thing. And thirdly, find people that believe in you, that will affirm you. And fourthly, like take a risk. Even if you're not sure if you have all the things on the like requirements, do it. Like think about it. Statistically, the world is telling you you're not going to do it. So fight back. Like apply for that job, push back. That's what I would suggest to you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And I think something that relates to this, a comment I heard from someone once was to learn how to take a compliment, right? Because you're talking about finding people who will support you and who are probably going to compliment you. And if you're someone who's uncomfortable with receiving compliments, you might react in a way that stops them. So learning how to take a compliment really helps. We have a couple of comments about Othman's question and then your response. So I must say, here in the perspective, just now from someone like yourself was extremely reassuring for a student who's approaching at the end of their degree. So thank you for sharing. And then look, little quote from you: it's going to be okay in the end. And if it's not, it's okay. It's not the end. I think this is like a perfect way to wrap up the question that you put out. Okay, we have someone send a question in the chat, Madeline. So, hi Grace, I have a question. How did you navigate networking in your career in the aspect of work relations? Also, how did you communicate with coworkers to build longstanding relationships and at the same time deliver on the job?
Yeah, I think, okay, so let me just read that question again. There's two ones, like how do I navigate networking? And then how do I like build long-standing relationships? I'll start with the second. In terms of like long-standing relationships, I'm a people person, but I'm also a vibe person in full transparency. Like if I want it to be authentic. Like I've been in many spaces and I feel like I'm one of those people who's really attuned to what I like and what I don't like. And so I try to find people that are like, that complements me in many ways. So it doesn't have to be that we have the same interests, but like we vibe, right? Like I like it, maybe, you know, whatever it is, it's just a connection. It's an intrinsic connection with folks that I look out for. And a lot of the times, like we talk about that in relation to friendships, and we talk about that in relation to like relationships, like, oh, like, you know, do you vibe with this guy, or like, do you vibe with this like girl, whatever, like if it's a loving relationship or a friendship. But it also applies to business. Like business is people, right? Like it's people who, like a lot of the times, like you grab drinks with your coworkers, like you can take your clients, like you engage with them outside of like, you know, regular work hours. I keep in touch with some of my clients that I vibe with. And so it's really like, it's personal. And so I would really encourage you. And when people say like, bring your full self to work, like, I think that's, for me, that's how I live it, right? Like I try to really be myself. Like on this call, you can definitely see my personality on this call. And there'll be people who like would see that and be like, I like her, you know, like, let's get in touch, like let's keep in contact. And it's a two-way stream. I think when people see that you're being like yourself and you're being authentic, they also feel like they have permission to do that. And then in that way, you filter out people that you're not gonna vibe with. So like if somebody isn't into me and my nails, they're likely never gonna contact me, and that's okay. So you just be yourself, present yourself in your fullness. And you will be drawn to people that like you as well. So that's the first thing, and really treat it as a real person. A lot of the times, like people reach out and I have calls with people and it just doesn't feel real. Like it just feels forced, it feels unauthentic, and I don't engage past that. And I'm very like strategic about that. And even though like I'm young in my career, like I'm very careful. If I work with a manager, because we change projects quite frequently, if I work with a manager and I feel like our vibe, like my spirit isn't in it, I'm not redoing it. Like that's just the way I do it. I'm very, because the relationships that I choose to engage with, I want to make sure I can be my full self and I can give into those relationships. And so I try to be very, very strategic about that. So that's the first piece. And that helps with like building a long-standing relationship, because it's not transactional, it's real. You're being yourself, you're developing a real like dynamic. And then the second question, which really was the first, about how do you like navigate networking? I would say like a couple of things in full transparency. Like when I go for networking, I think networking has changed so much in the context of the pandemic and in the context of like the virtual world that we live in. But like as we begin to transition towards like, you know, back to work and back to in person, I would say like tactically, like when you go for networking events, like one thing that I find really helpful is that like just be a nice person to everybody. Like at networking events, like the people who organize it, they see if you're only wants to talk to the senior partner. And if you're only there, like if you're just pushing people off and like not letting space, not holding space for others, like those things, like there's cues, right? It's not just about like, am I asking the most smart question, but it's like, am I a kind person? Like, am I a human? How do I treat others around me? Like, I think like, that's important, and that's a piece that people don't talk about as much. Like you can ask the smartest questions, but if you look like a mean person, nobody's going to want to work with you and nobody's going to hire you. So that would be my like little nuggets.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you for the question, Madeline. Okay, we have a few minutes left. We have so many questions still left that were sent in, but I feel like we're covering them. Parisa, I'll get to your question in a second. I wanted to ask you this question actually, Grace, because you also did mention a little bit about the work that you do now, and sometimes you're working late. The question has to do with work-life balance. And I thought it was a good question. So it asked, what daily habits or actions do you curate in your personal life that you can think contribute positively to your professional life and in maintaining that work-life balance?
Okay. Thank you. I will answer that. In full transparency, I was supposed to drop the recruiter contact. So I want to make sure I do that before the end of this session. So I'm just grabbing that really quickly, and then I will get to that question. Okay, so I'm putting her contact in the email. So that's the recruiter. She does campus recruiting out of Vancouver for McKinsey, and expert recruiting as well. So if anybody is interested, I'm just flagging that before we end. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, for sure. More having to do with work-life balance. What daily habits or actions do you curate in your personal life that you can think contribute positively to your professional life, but also help maintain that balance, or work-life balance?
Yeah, so okay, I actually thought about this question. I have a framework. So the three things that I tried to, well, the three ways in which I've segmented it is spaces, people, and things. So for me, like, I'm really drawn in terms of spaces. I get my energy from my environment. So I try really hard to like get myself out of where I normally like exist, just to give myself, my brain space. So I try to take like an hour walk a day if I can. I mean, I normally do my informational calls over the walk if I have to work. Sometimes I take calls over my walks, but it's a good opportunity for me to just like be in nature and just give my brain a bit of rest. I like that. The other thing I try to do is, as I said, like, I love traveling. So from time to time, like, you would just see me in another city. Like, I spent the last weekend in Toronto just cause, like, hanging with my homies. And I find that, like, really, I find that good because I can get out, I allow my space, my brain to get out of the norm. So whatever it is that works for you, like, do that. I also, like, really, I'm into interior decor, and I want I just, I'm a visual person. So if I need to stay calm, like, the spaces help. The other thing is people, in the sense that, like, as I mentioned, I live with my significant other, and I find that, like, it's really therapeutic to have someone to share my struggles with, my questions with, my joy with, and so for me, like, that's a big part of my life, and I share that because I think it's important for me to just be honest about what matters. And then I also have a really close-knit group of friends who I actually met at UBC my first day on campus doing Jumpstart. And it's a group of like 5 Black girls who, like, I've stayed in contact with. And I mean, we call ourselves the Sisterhood of the Traveling Wig, and we just have the best time together. And they're like super phenomenal, like, Black women who lift me up, hold space for me. And I think that matters a lot. And then the last thing is things. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I think a big part of our reality now is consumerism, and that comes with its problems and capitalism and et cetera, but I like things. So like if sometimes I coerce my significant other to give me flowers, or like I buy, I don't know, kombucha or whatever it is, like whatever it is that like gives me joy or makes me feel good. Like, I treat myself all the time. Like, I have my nail days, I do all of those things, and I'm kind to myself because I give my 100% plus 10 to work, and I should give my 100% plus 10 to myself and to my body. So if it's the gym that makes you feel refueled, if it's walking, if it's like snacks, whatever it is, like, that helps you feel good, like, don't slack on that. Like, I'm all about soft life. I'm all about enjoyment. I'm all about like living my best life always. So that's what I do. I think when we talk about like work-life balance, people always like, oh, like, how do you tell people you want to stop work at this time, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm very unapologetic. Like, I just do what I need to do. Like, I tell you, like, this is what I need to do to bring me joy. I'll make sure I have my work done on the deadline, but this is what I'm gonna do. And that's on period. That's just how I live my life.
Perfect. That sounds great. And that group name is just on point. That's a fantastic group name.
I don't know if they'll laugh that I put them on like this. So
they don't know. We don't know who they are, so it's all
we
good.
never know.
Parisa, I know we're almost out of time. Did you want to ask your question? I know you had your hand raised, and then
Right. Mine is very quick. I just was wondering, Grace, if you have any resources that you could share in terms of like when it comes to resume. I know there's a lot of resources out there, like nonprofits, even UBC itself, but I do sometimes find them that are very general and then not very specific to, especially like, you know, when it comes to tech industry, there's usually another sort of resume that is used. I was just wondering if you have any and if you could share.
Yeah, so I need to, so a few things. The first thing is that like I believe the SORDA school has like a template, and that's what I personally used. I'm happy to share that. Like obviously it's not firm approved or anything. It's just the resources that I got from SORDA, and I'm happy to share that. I can send it to Amir, and he can share with you as well in terms of like that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much, because you know, as much as we know, like resume is the first thing that the people are going to see. Like they can't see your vibe, they can't see your attitude. Like that's, oh, I'm going to judge you based on this. So I do feel like it's really important that it's, you know.
Yes, so I agree. I would say two things. Firstly, like we are really trying hard to like decentralize the recruiting system, in the sense that like we want to hire diverse talent, and we understand that means that like diverse talent may not have access to this like resume style. So like don't feel like you can't apply because you don't have that resume style. Like the things I talked about that we look out for: entrepreneurship, personal impact, leadership on our website. Make sure that stuff is integrated in your resume. You should still be fine. I'll send, as I said, I'll share with Amir the SORDA case book that I used, which has at the back of it the template. But I think so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is like reach out to the recruiter. I put her email in the chat. That's honestly the biggest thing. Talk to the recruiter. She's basically the gateway. So like even if your resume doesn't look like a particular way, you talk to her and she loves you, like that's it. Like it doesn't matter what your resume looks like. So please reach out to the recruiter if you're interested and have a conversation with her, and that matters a bit more.
Thank you so much, Grace. This call has been so lovely.
I'm happy to hear that.
And once Grace sends me that, well, send an email tomorrow with the recording of the event also, so you can watch again if there's a lot of information in this, plus our survey, plus the resume link. So thank you, Grace, for sending that. I'll ask you one final question before we wrap. We usually end with this question. What is the most important takeaway that you would like our audience to leave with today?
I think, be yourself, like, and be bold, like be boldly yourself, like the quirky, random, interesting parts of yourself, like let that shine. And that's what sets you apart. Like it's not your grades, it's not how you did all these things that everybody does. It's the way you think and the way you view the world and what you're passionate about, and be super bold about that. Like you're at the point in your life where you can literally do anything. Like literally the world is your oyster. Like be creative and just do what it is you want to do and do it unapologetically. Like you can make as many mistakes, quote unquote, but like it doesn't matter. Like just push yourself. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Great advice. We'll end it on that. We're just going to share with you a link for our survey. I'm just going to put it in the chat here. Please take a couple of minutes to fill this out. It'll help a lot in how we do future events, future alumni office hours. To the links here, we'll also send it in the email tomorrow. Grace, I really just want to thank you for this office hour. I could have asked you questions for another hour, but I won't, because I know you're very busy and everybody else in the room also. Thank you for participating, for asking your questions. We'll continue to do events like this starting again end of August near September with office hours. You can always come to our center for support in terms of career, resumes, interview practices, job fairs. We have our job fair on Thursday. If you'd like to attend, you can still register for it. And on that note, I think we'll wrap the event. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Grace. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.